I mean, God can do anything technically. I just would say that that's probably not your best route. I think something big is coming. I don't know what. Some people say, oh, that's kind of confusing, or that's kind of hard to wrap my head around. And to that, I say, yeah. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Stand Up, Stand Out podcast. I am your host, Joshua Warren, and welcome to episode number 10. Guys, we made it to the double digits, which, as I've expressed before in previous episodes, is a really, really big deal. So shout out to you guys for continuing to come back week after week so I have somebody to talk to. Shout out to my amazing wife for continuing to help me get these things out by just helping me with the set, helping me with editing, with social media stuff. She's a rock star. And thank you to the Lord for just continuing to be faithful and allow me to do this. So we made it to the double digits, guys. I'm excited to see where we go from here. Before we kick off this episode, I want to hear from you guys in the comments section. If you're on YouTube, what is a goal that you are setting for the year 2026? We're coming to the end of the year. I hope you guys all had a fantastic Christmas with family, friends, and just had a great time celebrating. But now as we kind of shift gears and we're looking towards the new year, what is one goal or one resolution that you are setting for yourself for the year 2026? I want to hear from you guys in the comment section. If you guys are on audio, I encourage you to come over to the YouTube side, subscribe to me there, and leave a comment. I would love to hear from y'all. But diving into this week's episode, this week I actually have the honor and privilege of getting to preach at my local church Sunday morning from the pulpit. Again, this will be my third time getting to do that, so I am super excited and trying to think. Memory serves. Yeah, this is the third time ever, but it's also third time this year. My first time getting to do it was earlier this year, so ending the year with my third time being up there. Super excited for that. But I wanted to use this time to briefly recap kind of what I'm going to be talking about from the pulpit, share some things that didn't make it into the sermon, share some things that made it into the sermon, but I want to just talk about how cool they were and things that really stuck out to me that I had never really thought about before. And then I actually want to share with you guys my goals for the year 2026 so that you guys can be holding me accountable as we jump into the new year. So super excited, but let's dive right on in. So this week, as I was preparing for my message, as I always do when I'm going to preach, I pray and I ask the Lord, what is it that you need them to hear? They're not my sheep, they're your sheep. So what is it that you need them to hear? And I was thinking about some different things and different topics, different passages, wasn't really sure where I was going to go. It's kind of tricky when it's just a one-off sermon because, I don't know, it's a little bit harder to just like go in and do an expository sermon on a particular passage. I feel like it's a little bit easier to go slightly more topical when you're doing one-offs. It's just easier to kind of think that way. But I was just praying through a bunch of different things. Where did the Lord want to take me? What is it that the people needed to hear that are going to be in the room that day? And he brought me to Luke chapter 2, which was funny because as we were preparing for Christmas, I feel like everybody was in Luke chapter 2. And if you guys were here for the Christmas special last episode, we were in Luke chapter 2. And so I had already been there. But he actually brought me to the very end of Luke chapter 2. So we have the birth account of Jesus, and then we get a story about when Jesus was 12 and Mary and Joseph accidentally kind of sort of totally lose him in Jerusalem. They panic for a couple of days. They end up finding him in the temple. And then that's kind of the last story that we get about Jesus until he's 30. So we have this big leap from 12 to 30 where we don't really know anything about him. And at the very end of Luke chapter 2, it says they've concluded their conversation at the temple in Jerusalem after they found him. He's 12 years old. And it says, but they did not understand the statement which he had made to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and he continued in subjection to them. And his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and in favor with man. And I read that, and something about it just clicked that it was like, yep, that's the one. And so I was like, okay, why? Like what about it? It's just, really, I mean, it's 2 verses, but it's really like one key verse. Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and favor with man. And so I was like, what does that look like? And so as I started reading it a little bit more, praying through it, the thing that the Lord kind of put on my heart was, hey, we're coming into the new year, and a lot of people are going to be setting goals. A lot of people are going to be making plans about what this year has for them. But I feel like no one's going to be focused on the areas that matter the most. And so the message title, which is going to be the same as this video title, is Increasing Like Christ. As we look forward to this next year in the ways that we want to grow and the plans we want to make and the resolutions that we want to set, are we focusing on our waistlines, our wallets, and our romantic interest, or are we focusing on increasing like Christ did by focusing on these different areas: wisdom, stature, favor with God, favor with man? So real quickly, I'm not going to get into the details of these 4 areas because my sermon does that, and I know that you guys won't hear my sermon, most of you at least, if you're just watching this on YouTube. But I'll give you a brief recap so that you understand what these 4 areas really pertain. So the first being wisdom. So the idea behind this is talking about Jesus' spiritual growth, that he had to grow in wisdom, and wisdom is applied knowledge. So the idea is that Jesus was learning about God's word and God's truth, and then he was learning how to apply that to align his life to it perfectly, because Jesus lived this life perfectly. Now, some people will ask the question, wait, how did Jesus increase in knowledge? If he was fully God, then God's all-knowing, how could he possibly increase in knowledge, right? And they'll try to use this to try and say that Jesus wasn't, in fact, fully God. That's not the case. Jesus was, in fact, fully God and fully man. So the idea is that when Jesus took on human nature, he did not subtract from himself any of his divinity or any of his godly nature, his divine nature. So he didn't get rid of his all-knowingness. He didn't get rid of his omnipresence. He didn't get rid of any of those things to become human. He took all those things, and then from there he added onto himself a human nature. And in his human nature, he did have limited knowledge. And so the idea is basically, the way scholars kind of frame it is, Jesus, when he was 5, wouldn't have the knowledge of a 30-year-old, but he would have the highest capacity for knowledge that any 5-year-old could ever possibly have. And so that's kind of the balance between the two, between the divine nature and the human nature. And some people say, oh, that's kind of confusing, or that's kind of hard to wrap my head around. And to that, I say, yeah, pretty much. I think part of where we struggle in our human nature, no pun intended, is we try to understand God perfectly, and we go, well, if I can't understand it, then clearly it's not possible, or it's not real, or whatever. When in reality, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really want a God that I can fully understand, because that means he's no smarter than I am, and that's terrifying to me. So this is one of those things that, does it stretch my brain a little bit? Does it hurt a little bit? Sure. But can I believe it because it's what Scripture says to be true? Yes, 100%. And it's going to be hard, and it's one of those mysteries of Christ, but it's also not completely a mystery. We have a general idea of what this looks like. And so the Scripture says he increased in knowledge. So the idea is Jesus did in fact have to learn. This is talking about his spiritual growth. And so one of the things that I hit on in the sermon is that our physical health is determined by three key factors: what we consume, what we practice, and how we rest. But the same God who designed our bodies designed our spirit in likeness. And so our spiritual health is affected by those same three key factors: what we consume, what we practice, and how we rest. And so I go through different examples of why those things are important, how we can utilize them. What are we consuming in social media, podcasts, news, TV shows, movies, music, friend groups, and the conversations that we allow ourselves to be a part of, the things we consume, right? What we practice. How are we about, being active in our faith, sharing with people when we're out and about, doing things to serve others? Are we constantly just hermiting ourselves in our house where we're safe, and comfortable, all those things. And then how we rest. Rest is an important part of the growth process when it comes to physical growth, if you're building muscle. And so spiritually, it's kind of the same way. We need to rest in Jesus and grow spiritually. And so I touch on all of those things and kind of how they apply. And then the next one is he increased in stature. And so this literally means that he just grew bigger physically, that Jesus just got bigger, which from 12 to 30, you'd hope so. But the kind of direction I took this in the sermon was, one, we should absolutely take care of our bodies to the best of our abilities. And I know there's 1,000 caveats to that conversation, so I don't dive super mad heavy into that. And if you don't have a 6% body fat, God doesn't love you, like none of that nonsense. I'm clearly not built well enough to claim that message anyways. I don't claim like if you eat at McDonald's, you're going to hell. Like that's nonsense. But I do talk about the fact that God created our bodies, and so for that reason, we should absolutely try to take care of them to the best of our abilities, and it's at least worth considering. But more importantly than the shape of our bodies, I talk about what we use our bodies for. And so I talk not only about the problems with sexual sin and how we can use our bodies in that way, but I dive into how do we use our tongue and our language to build people up or to gossip and to slander and to tear down. I talk about our ears. Do we actually listen to hear and to understand, or do we just listen to respond? I talk about our hands physically. Do we use them to love and to protect and to serve others, or do we use it to scare and to intimidate and to inflict pain? Those type of things. How are we using our body? Are we growing in ways to where physically we are getting healthier as people, not in just our physical shape, but in our physical actions and how we use our body? Are we getting healthier in that manner? The next one, favor with God. The idea here is that some translations, instead of Jesus increased in favor with God, it says he increased in grace with God. And so the idea is not that it's saving grace, it's the grace of a close and personal relationship with God. So Jesus grew in his relationship with the Lord. And what this points to is that Jesus trusted in God and he was obedient to God. And this is where one of the things that I had never thought about hit me And it was like, man, it was powerful. Jesus, we read, okay, Jesus grew in favor with God. He grew in a personal relationship with the Lord. Yeah, okay. But you think about that and you go, well, yeah, but he is God. And so that couldn't have been that hard for him, just to like get, spend time with the Lord, follow his law, like all those things. Like Jesus was perfect. It couldn't have been that difficult. Like having a personal relationship with God had to have been kind of a cakewalk. And so I was trying to think about like, we hear about when Jesus later is tempted by Satan in the wilderness, and we get that picture, and that's obviously like had to have been hard. You think about, but I was just trying to think about like what struggles would Jesus have to deal with in his life between 12 and 30. And one of the things that I just realized this week was that Jesus had to trust and be obedient to God through the loss of his father, Joseph, his earthly father, Joseph, his stepdad, whatever you want to call him, right? And at first, that doesn't seem like that big of a deal for Jesus, because it's like, well, yeah, but he's Jesus. So like when Joseph dies, he's like, dude, don't even stress it. Like I literally know exactly where he's going. Like this is all good. But you have to think about the fact he is still fully human. So he still has the human side of loss and of grief and of hurt. And then on top of that, because he's the firstborn son of the family, he's having to console his mom and his siblings through the loss of Mary's husband and of his siblings' dad. And he's having to walk that out inside of his human nature. And I never thought about that before. Again, like, I don't know why Joseph just keeps coming back around in my walk lately, but I never thought about the fact that Jesus had to deal with the loss of Joseph, but he had to do so perfectly, and that he had to trust in God and be obedient to God through the grief. Now, unless, just to make sure I'm being perfectly clear here, he did. I'm not saying that there's no way that he didn't. Jesus was sinless. I believe that 100%. But thinking about this actually brought me a really big sense of comfort, because, we read and we say things like, well, he mourns with those who mourn, he grieves with those who grieves. And you believe all those things, but there's this sense of comfort in knowing that he had to walk through this stuff too. Like in the same way that Jesus had to walk through temptation, Jesus also had to walk through grief. And so he knows exactly what it feels like when we walk through grief in our life, when we lose a loved one. It's not that he's sitting here going, I understand that it hurts and I'm here for you, but trust me, I've got a plan. Everything's going to work out for good. That's all true. But he can actually sit there and say, no, I know exactly what you're feeling right now. I know the depth of your pain. I know the ache of your heart. Like I know it all because I've felt it. I know the struggle of having to carry your loved ones and lead your loved ones through the loss of somebody they love, because I had to do it. And I never thought about that before. But as I was prepping for my sermon this week, that idea just really hit me. And it was just something that I pondered, and I really, really liked that whole thing. And then the last one the last thing we see Jesus increase in is in favor with man. And so the idea here is that Jesus grew to be someone of great reputation with the people around him. And so in my sermon, I kind of highlight a couple of key things with this. First is that Jesus did not gain favor with man by compromising God's truth. That's really, really important. It does not say that he gained favor with man by becoming popular. Also really important. Because I think oftentimes when we think, oh, we need to gain favor with man, that's kind of the way that we lean. Like, we need to get people to like us, we need to be more popular, or we need to accept or celebrate people's sinful choices and behaviors, or we can't stand for truth because then it's going to, kind of put us against each other. So I just have to keep my mouth shut. I just need to stay silent, because then if they get to know me, then over time, eventually 5 years down the road, they're going to know that I don't stand for that thing, or whatever. We play these funny games in our head where we justify our silence or our inaction when it comes to relationships. But it's in reality, Jesus gained favor with man just by being sincere and by being authentic, and while standing on truth, being compassionate and gracious and loving, but still always standing on truth and never compromising on that. And so you knew where he stood, and there was no getting around that. But because of that, he gained a great reputation with people, because they saw that he really lived what he preached, that he walked those things out. You didn't have to wonder where he was going to come down on an issue, because he was consistent. He had a great reputation. And then I talk about in the sermon how he was, had gained a reputation with his neighbors. He gained a reputation at work because he was a tradesman. He gained a reputation with fellow churchgoers, even though at the time they weren't churchgoers, they were temple goers or synagogue goers. But he gained this reputation. He gained favor with people in all these different areas of his life. And so what does that look like for us? I go through how many of you can even name the people that live in your neighborhood? We are so bad as a society nowadays about get out of your car, keep your head down, run to the front door. Don't wave to anybody. Don't say hi to anybody. Just run into the house. And then when you leave the house, keep your head down, run to the car, get in the car, go. So it's when was the last time you even started building a relationship with the people inside of your neighborhood? When's the last time you served one of your neighbors without being asked or having to mention it or anything? Just oh, you noticed one of their cans tipped over. Go and pick it up. Or you noticed that there was some garbage in their front yard that the wind had blew in there. Go and grab it. Or, I don't know, whatever it may be. You see that they show up with a truck full of stuff and they're trying to offload it by themselves. Go lend them a hand. I don't know. But it's when's the last time we just tried to actually build relationship with our neighbors? Because I feel for the most part, we don't really do that anymore. And then what's our reputation like at work? We, especially if you claim Christ, if you claim to be a Christian and you're in your workplace, everyone in your workplace is watching you all of the time, because they want to see if you're going to be real about it. So they're going to see how you handle stress. They're going to see how you handle, a negative outcome to something that you were wanting to happen. They're going to see when you mess up, if you're going to own it or if you're going to pass the blame. They're going to watch for all of these different things, because they want to see if there's anything different about this quote unquote Christ follower. And then, and so I even challenge, if you've been working anywhere for longer than 6 months and the people around you at work don't even know you're a Christian, that's a big problem. You need to address that this year, because that means you're either keeping your mouth shut entirely, or even worse, you're conforming so much to their way of life and their way of speaking and their way of doing things that they would have no idea that you were even a Christian. And so I fell into that camp. for years at the place I currently work. When I first started there, I conformed hardcore. And it was bad, man. I mean, I felt so convicted when I got to the place of just realizing that it wasn't healthy, realizing that I had failed, realized that I had failed to be the light in the dark. And I actually went to work and apologized to some of my coworkers for the way I had conducted myself, for the way I allowed myself to use my language, my attitude, like all those things. Like I had to go around and apologize to people, and it was weird, and it was embarrassing, and it was humbling, but now years later, I have a far better reputation and respect from the people that I work with because they know where I stand, and I try to conduct myself accordingly. And I got guys now at work who hold me accountable to that standard, and that's a huge blessing. So I just went into all of those things. Like, how can we, in this next year, look at those 4 different areas of our life and see where do we need to improve? Where do we need to improve in our spiritual growth, in our time with God, and just building a relationship with Him? How do we grow in our wisdom? What are we consuming? What are we practicing? What do we need to grow in? What do we need to cast off of us? Are there old things that we need to get rid of because we're consuming unhealthy things that we need to get rid of? Or are there sins that are entangling us? What is it that we're needing to lose in this next year? And then looking at stature. How are we using our bodies to serve, love, and protect the people around us, to build people up, to encourage people? Are there areas where we need to improve in that manner? And then in favor with God and in favor with man, of, again, like building that close relationship. Is there areas where maybe we're not trusting God or being obedient to God, and we need to fix that, and we need to correct that so that we can grow closer to Him and enjoy the grace of that close and personal relationship? And then favor with man. Are there areas of our lives where we need to start walking right so that we can gain the proper reputation, and that people will know that when we claim Christ, we mean it, and then we can walk those things out? Are there areas of our lives we need to improve? And so that's kind of like the gist of the whole sermon. That's like flyover view of kind of the whole thing. And so now I want to kind of get into what goals I set after prepping this sermon and reflecting on this in my own life. But before doing that, the one thing I didn't have time to fit into my sermon, I don't think, I'm actually recording this the night before my sermon. I don't think I'm going to have time to fit this in my sermon, but I want to share it here with you guys. This is an acronym that one of my mentors taught me about goal setting. I know he got it from somebody else, but I don't know who. So I apologize to whoever created this originally. I'm not trying to take credit for it. But the idea is that when you're setting a goal, you should always want it to be SMART. And SMART is an acronym. It means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So the idea is when you're setting a goal, you want your goal to be specific. So you don't want something really broad, like, I want to grow closer to God this year. Okay, super broad. What does that even mean? How is that even doable, right? It's way too broad. You want to get more specific. Measurable. Is there I want to do X amount of thing, I want to do this thing X amount of times a week. Okay, that's measurable, because now you can look at it and you go, okay, well, I wanted to do it 3 times a week, and this last week I only did it 2 times a week. I can measure that this didn't meet my goal, right? So now it's measurable. Achievable. You don't want to set something that's way unrealistic. I want to spend 87 hours a week just reading my Bible and praying to God. That would be great. I would love to live a life of existence that was in fact achievable, but with my schedule and the things that I do, there's no way that that's achievable, right? So you want your goals to push you. You want your goals to be different than what you're doing now, obviously. You want it to cause growth. So it's going to be outside of your comfort zone, but you want to make it achievable. The other thing in this kind of section with achievable is try to give yourself small wins early on. So think about ways where you can set up your goals to where maybe you're achieving a couple of your goals rather quickly into the process so that you kind of get pumped up and motivated to continue in the long haul. If you have all of your goals set really, really far out and you never see quick wins, it can be really hard to sustain. The fourth thing, relevant. It's kind of self-explanatory. You want your goal to be relevant to whatever it is that you're actually trying to achieve. If I'm trying to lose 100 pounds and my goal is to pray 3 times a day, I mean, you can pray for weight loss, but I've never heard that. I mean, God can do anything technically. I just would say that that's probably not your best route. Maybe a better goal would be like go for a walk, or I don't know. So you want your goals to be relevant. And then the fifth one is you want your goals to be time bound. So you want to set your goals in a way where you are setting time parameters on the goal so that you can go hit that benchmark and then look back and go, okay, how am I doing in this area? Do I need to adjust my goal? If I'm not hitting it, why? Is it maybe it was too broad and I need to get more specific? Maybe I didn't realize how big of a task this was going to be, and so I need to kind of readjust my expectation for how often this is going to take place. Whatever it looks like, you want to have time for you to be able to check in. But again, kind of going back to my previous point, you don't want all of your times to be so far out that you deny yourself easy, early wins. So personally, I think one of the reasons that New Year's resolutions tend to fall super flat on their face is because New Year resolutions typically are for the whole year. And, you know, you get 3 weeks into the year, maybe 4 if you're a rock star, and you don't have any measurable wins yet, and you're just like, I'm out. Like, that's a bust. And then by the time you get to the end of the year, you don't even remember the resolutions you had set, or if you do, you kind of remember them in shame because you realize that obviously you didn't follow up on any of them. So New Year resolutions are great. I think you can absolutely say for this next year, I want to focus on these things, but give yourself kind of check-in parameters so that you can follow up earlier in the year and go, am I on track? Am I doing this the right way? Because then if you are, you can give yourself a little pat. You can go, that a boy, and then you can keep going. So with that said, I'm going to give you guys my goals for the year 2026 and just kind of share with you kind of what I'm looking towards. Now, some of these fit all of these, the parameters I just gave you perfectly. Some of them kind of don't, but you'll see why. So first one, and these are not in any particular order as far as importance. These were just goals that I have, and I was just kind of putting them down as I was thinking about them. So this isn't like a priority list. This just is what came to me. So first is finish my bachelor's degree for seminary school, which should be completed by May, and then start my master's degree program. Now, I don't have an exact time parameter on this. My bachelor's degree, my last class is in March. My schooling is a little bit different because I'm in kind of a like expedited program. So each class is only 6 weeks long. So I should be done with this class halfway through April. But then in order to actually graduate with my degree, I have this graduation module they have me do where I have to write a couple of papers and submit some different stuff or whatever. So all in all, I should be getting my degree somewhere around May or June. And then I'm going to be starting my master's. Now, I have kind of 2 options when it comes to my master's. Either roll directly into my master's, so if I graduate in May, start my master's in June, or hold off through the summer and start my master's in the fall. I did not write on my goal when I'm going to start my master's because I kind of have two different ideas about both sets of options. The biggest factor in when I start my master's program for me is what's going on with my 9-to-5 vocation. I have discussed on earlier episodes, but right now, my future work is not looking very good. It's actually looking pretty shaky. And so I'm going to talk about that kind of in a minute. But with that, I don't know where I'm going to be from a career standpoint when I finish my bachelor's. So if I'm in a place where I don't really have a lot of work, or I'm in a new vocation that's not eating up so much of my time, I may just jump right into my master's in June, just get started on it and get rolling. If my work, by the grace of God, picks up and I still have my normal 9-to-5 vocation that I have now, then I may wait to start my master's until the fall and give myself the summer off to just spend some time with family, kind of recoup and relax and work my normal 9-to-5. For those of you that don't know, by the time I finish, if I finish in May, I will have done my entire 4-year degree in about 15 months-ish. So I've been going, like super hard. So the idea of not rolling directly into my master's sounds great. But on the other hand, I'm a very ambitious person, and I'm also the type of person where I just want to get stuff done. So the idea of rolling right into my master's so I can just be done that much earlier also sounds great. So for that goal in particular, I don't have a time set. All I know is that at the very latest, by the fall, I would like to be starting on my master's. Now, the Lord could do 1,000 things. He could make it so I couldn't afford to start my master's. He could, do something with my career path to where now I have to put school on hold for a year. Of course, there's 1,000 caveats. I'm submitting all of these goals and these plans to him, and whatever he wants to do with them, he can. But these are my goals for the year 2026. So the first one is finish my bachelor's. I should have put in there finishing my bachelor's with a 4.0. As of right now, I have a 4.0 GPA in my bachelor's program. Humble brag, I know. I'm a big deal. But it really is something that I'm trying to hold on to. I've got 4 classes left, so I'm hoping to continue that GPA roll to finish my bachelor's with honors before rolling into my master's program. The second goal I have is to journal more during my quiet time, at least 4 times a week. So I do my quiet time every single day, thereabouts. Of course, do I miss one every once in a while? Absolutely. I'm human. But for the most part, I get into the Word every single day, whether it's my physical Bible or if it's on my phone. I do devotional plans with different people on my phone. Friends, I do one with my wife, stuff like that. And I bought a prayer journal months back because I felt like God was putting me in this season of preparation, and I wanted to be able to just kind of journal and write the things down that that he was showing me, and just having things I could remember that I could go back on later and just remember what all was happening in this season. But I will admit that since I started the podcast, my journaling's actually gotten a lot worse, because every time now I have stuff that like really sticks out to me, stuff that really hits me. Instead of journaling about it, I end up telling you guys all about it, which is great because this is kind of like an online journal that I can go back to eventually. But there's a lot of things that the Lord says to me, a lot of things that I feel stirring in my heart that I don't share on the podcast because A, time, but B, there's just certain things I don't want to share with all of you. I love you guys, but I don't want to share everything with you. There's things that I want just for me. There's other things that he puts on my heart that I'm still, asking him about that I don't have clarity on. And so for that reason, I don't share it with you guys because I don't really know what it means. There's just been this stirring in my heart and I'm not really sure where it's headed. And so for that reason, I don't share it. So one of my goals for this year is to journal during my quiet time at least 4 times a week. And so I still have my journal. I keep it with my Bible in my backpack that I take with me everywhere. But I've just been really, really bad about pulling it out. So that is one of my goals. It's achievable 4 times a week. That means even if I'm doing my quiet time 7 times a week, if I can basically journal half of the time, I will be hitting my goal. So it's definitely achievable. It's relevant because doing my journal is something that does actually help me grow in my relationship with the Lord. One, I process better as I write, but also it is a book of remembrance so that later in life I can go back and look at all the ways that God spoke to me, all the ways that I felt God moving in my life, the things I felt God calling me to. And so it's just a great book of remembrance, a thing that will help me stay close to Him and help me trust Him in the future. When I'm in front of something that scares me, I can look back and see all the ways that He's been faithful. Time bound. I wrote 4 times a week. I didn't write specific check-in times, but typically the way that I'll do it is especially with a New Year's thing, I'm going to check in with myself towards the end of January. So I may even do it with you guys on episode, what would that be, like 14, where I'm going to sit down and go, okay, guys, so remember all those goals I told you about on episode 10? Here's where I'm at. Here's what I've been doing. And check in with you guys in real time and just kind of show you what this process looks like for me. So journaling is my next goal. The next one, continue the podcast. And I literally wrote for my time until the Lord tells me to stop. So if you guys have been here since the beginning, you know this podcast was not my idea. This wasn't on my bucket list. It was something I felt the Lord called me to. And I had no idea why. And I still have no idea why. And so with 2026, I just simply wrote my goal is to continue faithfully in this podcast until the Lord tells me to stop. And He may never tell me to stop. I may be doing this till He takes me home. I don't know. Part of me gets kind of excited at the idea of celebrating episode 100 or episode 1000 and just saying I've been doing a podcast for 7 years or 12 years or whatever. I have no idea what this is going to develop into. But one of my goals for this year is to continue faithfully doing the podcast. It is a lot. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of tasks. But because I feel called to it, I make it a priority, and I'm going to continue on. The next one is email my kids more and share with them at least once every 3 months. Now, if you guys know me, you go, Josh, you have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old. Why are you emailing them? Let me explain. So something my wife and I did before our kids were born was we actually set up email accounts for each of them individually. And we don't really make the emails public. We give them to close family to have, but generally it's more for us as parents. And we set it up so that we can email our kids letters and pictures and videos and whatever we feel like. And then when they turn 18, we will give them the email account and the password, and they will have this giant digital folder of memories and of letters and of, photos and all these things that we've just been collecting for 18 years, and they'll just have it online. And so I loved this idea when I first heard it. This was something I immediately wanted to implement with our firstborn. So we did. We implemented it again with our second. But I realized, because I sent them an email on Christmas, that for the most part, I haven't really been emailing them throughout the year. I email them every year on their birthday, and I email them on Christmas. With my son, he ended up in the NICU, and so I did write him an email while I was sitting at his bedside in the NICU. But as I was writing them at Christmas, I just realized that I'd been really slacking on writing them. I usually have been this year, I only wrote them twice, their birthday and Christmas, and then my son's NICU trip. So technically he got 3. But I just was like, man, I need to be better about this. I want to write them more. Because one, I like sharing with them the stuff that they're doing, like in the present. Like, with my daughter, I'm like, this Christmas was awesome because right now you are in just your girly girl phase. You just want everything pink and purple and sparkly, and you want princesses and unicorns, and and so I'm just like sharing that with her so that when she's 18, she can hear what she was like at 3, because we think like, oh, we'll remember everything. In reality, we forget so much so quickly. And so, I just shared some of the funny stuff that she said, some of my favorite memories that we gained this year together. And I share those things. But the other thing that I love about this email idea is I actually use it to share with my kids the things that I'm learning, the things that I'm dealing with as a 28-year-old, 28-year-old. Because when they're 18, and they're starting to go through, now I got to find a full-time job. I want to try and find a spouse. I want to try and start a family. I want to, X, Y, Z, do these things. When I'm trying to give them advice as a now, 50-year-old or whatever I'll be, I'm not going to sit here and do the math. They'll go, yeah, what do you know? Like when you were my age back, there was only 13 colonies and, whatever else, like that whole sort of mentality. And so with this email, I'm able to share with them what I'm going through right now of like, my career's kind of up in the air and I don't know where the Lord's going to take it. And me and your mom are struggling as we just bought our first home and we're trying to figure out how to make it financially work. And I'm, learning all these things as I walk with the Lord. And so I'm just sharing with them my life in this stage in hopes that when they're 18, it'll hit close to home to where they're at, that it'll give them wisdom and knowledge and letting them know that they're not alone, that their dad has gone through it in the same way that they're going through it. And so I'm just sharing wisdom and knowledge and insights and experiences and all those things. And so I love that email. I love doing that with the kids. I pray that when they turn 18, it means as much to them as it means to me. So one of the goals I had was just email them at least once every 3 months. So that'll basically double my numbers, put me from twice a year to 4 times a year. I will say I already went on my calendar and set dates every 3 months that just says email the kids, and I have it set up to give me a notification reminder to do it. So that hopefully this isn't something that as life passes me by, I just kind of forget about. I have it set in stone for the year. This is one of those goals where the immediate, like, good job, you did it, is not really going to be there, right? So this is one of those ones that is going to be kind of a longer or postponed satisfaction or achievement. So I just know that going into it so I don't get down about it. I set those notification reminders and then I will look forward to those times. And hopefully I'll just get to a point where I'm so used to writing them that I don't even need the reminders anymore because I'm actually emailing them way more than once a quarter. But who knows? So for right now, at least once a quarter, that's the goal. The next one, probably the most important one on this goal list, if I'm being completely honest, is prioritizing my marriage with a date night at least twice a month. So again, some of you guys may not know me. You may not know my story, my situation right now. I'm a husband. I'm a dad to 2 littles, like I just said. I work a 9 to 5 that is right now about 40 hours a week, but it's 3 hours a day of commute. So it immediately bumps me up to almost 60 hours a week there. I work basically 2 part-time jobs for my church, and then I'm doing full-time online seminary school. And then, showering, eating, all those other things on top of it. Because of that, over the course of the last 6, 8, 8 months, really since my son came along, and it's not in any way his fault, but it's just really since that kind of happened that my wife and I's date night has become like non-existent. Before he got here, we were doing pretty good about like a twice a month schedule thereabouts. We were staying in a pretty healthy routine. Then when we had him, because of the NICU trip and everything else, it threw us out of our routine, and then we just never got back into it. And that's entirely my fault as just the leader of my home. I never made it a priority. And because our schedules are crazy busy with everything we've got going on, I've just continued to kind of push it off to the side. And I've felt a tremendous amount of conviction for this, because in reality, outside of my relationship with the Lord, the relationship with my wife is the second most important thing to me. And so I cannot let that become a back burner thing. I cannot let the enemy have any sort of foothold in my marriage, because my marriage is a thing on which the rest of my life rests on, outside of, again, my relationship with the Lord. And so you guys are hearing me say right now that my priority to my wife is to have a date night with her twice a month. And that may not always be like dinner out and all that. Like, thankfully, we have an amazing support system who are constantly offering to watch our kids, so we can go do things like that. But financially, that's not always realistic. So it may be, hey, after we get the kids in bed, we're gonna, do a fun game activity thing, watch a movie, whatever. Like, we'll, figure something out, but being intentional about like twice a month at least, we're gonna spend time together, just you and I. And hopefully at least once of those every month, we'll get to be something out where we're getting rid of the kids and we're getting to just spend time one-on-one, getting to be husband and wife instead of mom and dad. But I'm not going to put that in the goal, because it's not always going to be achievable. So what is achievable is at least twice a month. We're intentional about spending time together. So that is probably my biggest and most important goal for the year 2026. The other ones, schedule a Sabbath at least once a month. Because of the schedule I keep, I do not have a day of rest ever. I genuinely could not tell you the last time I had a day off from everything, where I didn't have schoolwork to do, sermons to prep, logistical work to do, actual work to do. Like, I could not tell you. It's been months and months and months and months, if not at least a year, since I've had a day where it's like, just wake up, go spend time with the Lord, sit in the quiet and rest with him, and just have like a Sabbath. So because of that, I've realized again how unhealthy that is and how much of a toll that's taken on me. So my goal is to schedule a Sabbath at least once a month. I will tell you right now, out of all the goals I think I'm going to fail at, this is probably the one that I think I'm going to fail at the most, because once a month really doesn't seem realistic. Honestly, once a quarter might be a better, more achievable goal. But I know for my long-term health, if I can get it to once a month, I'll be in a lot better position. So for that reason, I'm going to push myself right off the bat by saying once a month. But I'm going into it knowing that the more realistic and achievable model of this goal will probably be once a quarter. The other one, I only got two other ones, and we'll wrap up. I know we're running a little long tonight. The second one, this is a little bit more practical, is stay on my whole food lifestyle and work out at least 3 times a week. So again, for those of you that don't know, about a year and a half ago, I was about 300 pounds. I went on the carnivore diet for a year straight with no cheats. I lost a little over 80 pounds. I got off carnivore in August of this year. I put about 30 pounds back on because, I told myself I'm never going back to my unhealthy habits. And for a while I was doing really good. And then, especially around the holidays, started to let loose. And I just all chaos broke out. I returned to all my old habits and just eating junk. put 30 pounds back on, and immediately I was like, okay, stop. This is not right. This is not healthy. I need to cut all this out. And so I cut way back. But I also recognized, as much as I actually enjoyed carnivore and I loved it and it was really good for me, just health-wise, I felt great. I really did miss fruits and vegetables. So now I'm doing a basically like 90% carnivore, but I'm also allowing myself some fruit and vegetables as long as they're not getting way out of hand. I don't want to just be eating fruit and veggies nonstop all of the time. Just because, especially with fruit, way higher in sugar, right? But one of the things I noticed on carnivore was just how much I lacked in a lot of basic nutrients, vitamins, and mineral stuff because I was only eating meat. So I'm allowing myself some fruit and veggies. But with that, my goal for 2026 is to just stay in this lifestyle. This is not a diet. When I did carnivore, I told myself I was going to do it for a year. I'm not saying I'm going to do whole food for a year. I'm saying I'm going to do whole food, hopefully till the Lord takes me home. I feel better on it. My body's happier on it. I stay at a way healthier weight. My mental clarity, my mental drive, my strength, like everything is just better when I'm eating this way. And so I want to just stick to it and I just want to stay on this. So this isn't a time bound goal. This is something I just want to stick to forever. And then the 3 times a week, that's measurable, right? Obviously, if it was my preferred, I'd be like workout 5-6 times a week. One of the things is my career, my 9-to-5 job is actually super physical a lot of the time. I do manual labor. And so even without a gym, just by eating healthy and my normal 9-to-5, I usually get in really good shape. But working out is nice because it allows me to target and to train certain muscles that I don't necessarily hit in the same way during my 9-to-5. And then I also have times in my 9-to-5 where it's just not quite as physically daunting and it's not quite a toll physically. And so working out just makes sure that I'm still, burning calories, staying active and keeping my body in shape. And then the last one is connect with a friend or acquaintance once every 3 months. One of the other things I realized with the schedule I've been keeping is that I have not allowed myself time to just connect with people that I've been telling myself I was going to connect with. I have friends that I've been friends with for years, which if you're watching this, shout out you guys, because you know exactly who you are, that every time we text, we're like, yo, we should get together soon. And it's like, oh, for sure. Let's check the schedule and I'll hit you back. And then it just doesn't happen. And then like a year passes by or 2 years pass by or 3 years passes by and we just haven't connected. And then we do connect and it's like we never skip a beat, but then when we connect, we're like, all right, we cannot let another year pass by without seeing each other. And then lo and behold, a year later, we're like, yo, we should meet up, And I feel like that's life for everybody. But with the season that I've been in lately, it's been especially bad. And there's just people that I miss. There's people that I want to get together with, but because I've been so busy, it's been hard to find the time. And so I'm just setting the goal of connecting with one of those people once every 3 months, once a quarter. Find a time. And a lot of these people now have spouses of their own and even kids. And so it makes it even easier because now it's like me and my wife and my kids can go connect with their families or invite them over for dinner or whatever. And so it's not just a me thing. It's something I can bring my family along for. So I don't feel like I'm, spending even less time with my family. So it kind of works out. So that's kind of like my last goal for 2026. And you may be wondering why I just spent all of that time explaining all of those things to you. But as I've said before, guys, with this podcast, yes, it is a platform where I sit and I share. But more than anything, I want this to grow into a community where you guys feel like you know me and I can get to know you guys. And so I want to be able to share these things with you so you know what it is that I'm focused on, what the Lord's showing me, the things I'm feeling convicted about, the things I'm trying to grow in. And so I can check in later this year and, maybe at the end of January or at the end of the first quarter and go, how am I doing in these things? And just be real and authentic with you guys and vulnerable about maybe where I failed, maybe where I've succeeded, whatever that looks like. But I also just want to do that as a practice so that if you guys ever want to talk or reach out or, I can start to get to know you guys. I can start to build relationships with you guys. I can help hold you accountable to your goals or whatever they may be like. I just want to foster that type of community. So I'm just doing it by leading by example, essentially. And then the last thing I wanted to share was just that 2026, I really, really feel like it's going to be a year of change for me and my family. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons why I think that. It's been a lot of conversation with the Lord, and I can tell you that with full confidence. I think something big is coming. I don't know what. But that is why I set the goals that I did, was because I realized that I think whatever's coming is going to require me to take a step of faith. And, people talk about like taking a blind leap or taking a blind step. It's not necessarily blind, right? Because I'm trusting the one who's saying, follow me. And I know that wherever he's leading me is going to be good. So it's not blind in the fact of, I don't know, I can't like trust where I'm going. I can fully trust where I'm going. It is blind in the sense that I don't know what it looks like from a practical standpoint of where he's calling me to or what it's going to look like, at least not yet. But I do think that 2026 is a year where I'm going to be required to take a step. And so because of that, I wanted to focus my goals on these 4 areas of increasing like Christ. Increasing in my wisdom. That is 1, finishing out my schooling, practical wisdom, especially seminary schools, getting in the Word, studying the Word, learning theology and doctrine and all those things. So that's wisdom. And then my journaling goal of spending time in my quiet time journaling, writing out prayers, and building that relationship with the Lord in that aspect. In stature, as far as my body goes, staying on my whole foods diet, working out 3 times a week. Those are things that I am looking forward to doing with my body throughout this year. And then in favor with God and in favor with man, that's most of all my other goals. In favor with man is connecting with friends, having a reputation as someone who's not going to just brush you off for years at a time, but actually making an effort to see you every couple of months, emailing my kids, prioritizing date night with my wife, like building and focusing in on my relationships. That's my favor with man aspect. And then my favor with God is me scheduling a Sabbath and having time to just be with God and reflect with God and spend that time with him. And so I don't know what this year holds in particular, but this is why I set the goals that I did, was so that I can focus on these 4 areas. And so that whenever he calls me, I feel like I'm at my best, that I'm sharp and that I'm ready to go. And so these were the areas where I knew either I was already starting to become a little dull, or I was not quite where I needed to be, or it was areas where maybe I'm doing well, but if I don't hold to them, I can go off the reservoir rather quickly. And so I just wanted to focus on those areas. And so with that, I want to encourage you guys to really just think about those 4 key areas of wisdom, stature, favor with God, and favor with man. And think about, for your year 2026, what does that look like for you? What is the Lord placing on your heart that maybe you need to change? What are some goals that you need to set that are realistic, that are achievable, but things that you need to improve to have a healthier life? And I'm not just talking diet, right? A healthy spiritual life. To experience spiritual growth in the year 2026. to build up your relationships with the people around you, your coworkers, your spouse, your kids, your extended family, friends that you haven't connected with. Just all of those things. I hope that this week you will take time to really sit and reflect on that. What does the Lord have for you in the year 2026? And what goals do you need to set to prepare yourself and those that you lead? For you men out there, if you're a husband, if you're a father, you need to think about the goals you need to set to prepare your family for whatever's coming. Because yes, you're not completely responsible for their actions, but you are responsible to try and lead well. So you should lead by setting goals and getting purposeful with how you prepare. Getting intentional. That's the word I was looking for. You need to get intentional with your goal setting with your family to prepare them for whatever it is you think the Lord has in store for you this next year in the year 2026. So with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope this episode's been a blessing. Sorry we ran a little bit longer than normal, but I hope that it blessed you. And guys, I hope you have a fantastic New Year's as we look forward to 2026. I'm so excited to see what God does with the podcast. And I hope to just continue to build this community and build the relationships. And outside of that, guys, I hope that this week you find a way to stand up and stand out for Christ. I'll see you guys next week. Peace. Hey guys, thank you for checking out another episode of the Stand Up, Stand Out podcast. I would just like to encourage all of you to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are on social media, I am on all platforms at the SUSO Podcast. That's the SUSO Podcast. You can find me everywhere, so go drop me a follow. And lastly, if you're here and you want to know why I started this podcast and kind of the mission behind it, I would encourage you to check out this episode right here. And if you want to know what it means to stand up and stand out for Christ, I would encourage you to check out this video right here. Outside of that, guys, I hope you have a great week and I'll see you next episode. Peace.